the quality of your relationship out there, conscious couples, conscious singles listening, your intimate relationship will be directly correlated to the level of emotional maturity within it. Maturity.
If I were to put myself in a male's body and grow up in a prison where you literally you're not encouraged to have a diary, you're not encouraged to talk about your feelings, you're not encouraged at all. Like, you don't see anyone that's the same gender as you talk about their feelings, express their emotions whatsoever. Like, I would feel like so suppressed. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Today, we have episode 157. Are you in an emotionally mature, underline, emotionally mature relationship? So for those of you who listened to the last episode, I just reviewed it earlier today with Emilia. We had a little date day. We went to the bookstore. We got lots of food. We're very excited. It is Sunday night right now. So welcome to our Sunday evening. I know for you it's Monday, maybe Tuesday, depending on when you're listening to this.
Happy Monday!
Happy Monday. What's happening? Before we jump into this episode, I want to say on the end of the last episode, we promised you we would talk about the Richter scale and how different that can be in a relationship, all that kind of stuff. But Emilia and I really wanted to bring this episode about emotional maturity into today. So that will be coming in the future.
Yes.
Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show and so many others. As I mentioned to you last week, sweetheart, we now are officially working with 68 podcasters between group coaching and production and coaching, and that's not including the 28 business owners that I'm working with as well. So things are happening. It's awesome. Thank you so much. If you want to start, grow, scale, or monetize a podcast, reach out to myself and I will put you in touch with my business partner, Kevin. We have an amazing production team that produces this show as well as Next Level University and Evolve Ventures.
Yeah, and they handle feedback really well, specifically Kev.
Yeah.
We gave him a lot of great feedback, and I mean that. They handle feedback. That's one of the biggest things that we said that at Evolve Ventures we value deeply about NLPS.
Improvement oriented.
You have to be.
We have a self-improvement company, so if our production team was not improvement oriented, that would be a serious problem.
Yeah,
production team, shout out to all of you. Seriously, thank you. Okay, before we jump into this episode, my love, what is your intention?
So my intention is actually per what you had mentioned about the Richter scale. My intention is to have this episode help couples that are listening understand and comprehend emotional maturity and likewise emotional immaturity a little bit better, because what we've found and what we'll uncover and share in this dialogue together is that these are there's meta skills underneath that are absolutely important for understanding why each other's Richter scales, which we'll talk about in another episode, might be so off, aka why you and your partner really might not be getting along, why you guys might not be vibing in certain situations, and why you feel as though your partner might be emotionally responding to you in a way that might not be in proportion to, let's say, whatever challenge, aka the fights that you have. It blows up way too quick because of this, what we're going to be talking about today.
Pre-frame, reframe, deframe. I want to pre-frame everyone out there watching or listening. The point of the Conscious Couples podcast is to help you flourish in your intimate relationship. Super important. I feel like we must define the Richter scale here real quick. Okay.
Please.
So when Emilia said Richter scale, and I said it earlier, what we mean, and I know most of you probably know, but just in case, in the context of relationships, a Richter scale, so let's say you grew up in California and earthquakes were common, and your partner grew up in Massachusetts where there's one earthquake every decade.
Mm-hmm.
I think Emilia's TV's just shut off.
Is that okay? We're power savers.
Okay. All right. We're rolling through. Excellent. That's an interesting screensaver. So anyways, imagine your partner grew up in California and you grew up in Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts there's only one earthquake maybe every couple of years or whatever. And even then it's a small earthquake on the Richter scale.
Yeah.
That's a good metaphor for imagine a partner that grew up in an environment with a lot of aggressive communication, back to the previous episode where we talked about the 4 communication styles, and a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting, that kind of thing, versus a partner who grew up in an environment that was very calm, cool, collected. Maybe they didn't ever yell. So I grew up in an environment with a lot of chaos, to say the least. Some drama and maybe a slight amount of trauma in my childhood. My mom and stepdad did not get along, and that's a polite way to put it on a public medium. And Emilia grew up in a household where she did not see her parents fight basically ever.
Yeah.
And so her and I had different Richter scales. And so we're going to get into that in another episode, but I think it's very relevant to what we're going to talk about today. Okay.
I agree.
So Emilia and I, we were on a little mini adventure day earlier, and we were talking about what we wanted to talk about on today's episode. And I told her a little sort of story about last week. Kevin and I recorded an episode, and right in the middle of it, I could tell that he brushed over something with him and Taryn, his wife, that would actually be really hard for a lot of men, but for him it's really easy because he's a very emotionally mature man. That's one of the reasons him and I get along very well, and we're going to get into it. So in real time on the Next Level University podcast, I said, Kev, what do you think emotional maturity is? And he defined it, and then I looked it up. So we chat GPT'd it live on the Next Level University podcast. And I was blown away by what it came up with. And so this is what I wrote into Chat GPT.
Can I stop you even before? Because I would ask our listeners to have them answer the same question before you bring up what the internet and by default, the amazing extension of ChatGPT.
AI.
How would you, dear listener?
You mean you don't want everyone to just blatantly
No,
rely on
I
AI?
really want them to think about how would they define emotional maturity? Because one of the things that we talked about, to also add a little context, is we kind of know, right? We kind of know when we see it. We know when we experience that this person is emotionally mature.
So everybody out there, think of someone that you consider emotionally immature.
Right.
Okay.
We always have someone in mind, and they come quick.
Let's sit in that for a second, and Emilia and I will participate as well.
Mm-hmm.
So close your eyes. If you're driving, do not do this. If you're not driving, close your eyes. And think of someone who you consider very emotionally immature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got it. All right, same deal, same shit,
but
emotionally, but different, but emotionally mature. Oh, myself. No, I'm kidding. That's a good example of emotional immaturity. Sometimes I say jokes on this podcast that are just for Emilia. I love it. I love it. Because I love you too, baby.
Oh,
I know what she'll die with.
I'm
it's
so sorry
best.
for your eardrums.
I like when you laugh into the mic, actually.
I know, but I would literally blow someone's eardrums.
We
so
apologize
I
in
to
advance.
Cackle backwards.
Cackle backwards.
Cackle goes.
That's a new yoga move. It's called the cackle back.
It works with the throat chakra.
All right, so ChatGPT's definition of emotional maturity. Here we go. I've been waiting to read this for so long.
They thought of someone. I'm asking them to think, actually define emotional immaturity and/or emotional maturity. You're saying think about someone.
But this is about
cool.
me.
Think about someone, and now I want you to actually put words to it. How would you define emotional immaturity?
What are they like?
How would you define emotional maturity?
What would you take a
I was going to say we
it?
should lead by example. So the best way that I would describe emotional maturity is...
Emotional maturity or emotional immaturity?
I would say I'm going to start with emotional maturity.
Thank you.
Because immaturity is the literal opposite of that. Emotional maturity is the ability, the capacity, the willingness, and the ability to be able to name what emotions you're experiencing. It also includes the ability to receive other people's emotions while being able to hold a regulated state. So, for example, you're not just going to be able to be okay with just happiness or joy. You're going to also be able to be regulated and calm with emotions like anger and disappointment and grief and sadness. And it's the ability to exchange emotional states in a way that can lead to constructive and productive relational dynamics.
Nice. Whoa.
And so
Strong
emotional
word.
immaturity is the complete opposite of that. You
Nice.
literally
Can't
cannot
handle emotions.
willingness, ability, capacity to name, to receive, and to build relationships with emotions present and as a part of your relating to others. You literally can't do that, and you're not willing to, and you're not able to.
Well said, love.
Thank
well
you.
said. I would define it, but I also think that you did a great job, and I want to move on to
Yes,
this. I've been
I
waiting
know.
to read this for quite some
I
time.
appreciate your
Of course.
delay of
Yeah.
gratification.
Yes, which we're going to get into. We're going to get into it here. This is great. I feel very emotionally mature right now. Emilia's winking at me for those of you not on YouTube. Okay. Emotional maturity is the ability to understand, manage, and express emotions in a healthy and constructive way.
Beautiful.
You used the word constructive. Nice. And she did not look this up in advance. I did. It involves self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, and the ability to navigate relationships with wisdom and integrity.
Ooh, I love that. Both of that, wisdom and integrity.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Combing the internet for the best stuff. Okay, here's a breakdown of its key components. Now, this is the part that I really want to land. When I was on the episode live with Kev and I looked this up, and I asked him that same question that I asked you, which between you and me, you did a much better job than he did, although I do think he did a good job defining it as well.
I mean, for a man, I'm sure he did a great job. And I say that not as an anti-man type person, but just because of some of the things that we'll bring in to this episode.
One thing we are going to just share here, because Emilia and I are all about honesty and truth and candor, is men tend to be statistically less emotionally mature than women, and there's cultural reasons for why that is. One of the reasons we've talked about on this podcast in the past is I wasn't encouraged to have a diary. I wish that I was. I have a journal now that I write in, and young girls in my upbringing had a diary, so they would reflect on their emotions and how they're feeling and all that kind of stuff, whereas with men, we weren't supposed to have feelings and stuff. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get into this.
I'm not going to add on to that. I'll bring it in later.
Okay,
so
sounds
keep
good.
going, baby.
All right. So one of the things on the episode that was really important for me to understand and evaluate was there's a lot of sub-skills under this. So when you think about emotional maturity, because I know they sound very similar when you say the words. Maturity. When you say emotional maturity, it's actually very difficult to be emotionally mature. Okay, and I want to explain why. So there's ChatGPT gave 11 things that are sub-skills underneath this one label of emotional maturity. And I'm going to go through them quickly, and then we're going to have a little dialogue.
And there's so much more than this.
Yes.
Like, this is just like a basis summary. So not to overwhelm anyone, but like that's just to show the magnitude.
The other thing about this podcast that I want to make as clear as possible is this is the stuff we never learned in school. We are here to learn things that are critical to flourish in our intimate relationship that we never learned in school. And I got to say this, it pisses me off that I never learned any of this in school.
In school, out of school, with parents, without parents, around friends, in life.
So I'm going to feel my emotions of anger and frustration and turn them and transform them into constructive awareness. Okay, so number 1, self-awareness. Number 2 is emotional regulation. Number 3 is empathy. Number 4 is accountability. Number 5 is resilience. Number 6 is healthy communication. Number 7 is delayed gratification and impulse control. Number 8 is self-respect and boundaries. Number 9 is managing expectations. Critical. 10 is conflict resolution and forgiveness. 11 is emotional intelligence versus emotional maturity. Okay, don't worry about that 11th one. I'm going to go through these first 10, and I want everyone out there to please think about their partner and think about their relationship. The episode that we're doing right now, if you take nothing else from this, I want it to be, am I in an emotionally mature relationship? Because, babe, if I had read these in a past relationship when I was in my 20s, I would have to go, oh, shit. Ruh-roh.
Well, what does that mean if you're not, right?
It's another episode.
Well, this is where I think that it's helpful for us to be able to extrapolate for our audience, like the long-term compound effect of being in an emotionally immature relationship and how,
Well, let's do that right after this part.
yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Yeah. All right. So I want you all thinking about your relationship. Okay. Is there high self-awareness or low self-awareness? So let's do just green, yellow, red. Is it green, yellow, or red? So Emilia, I'm going to do this live with you as well. Green, yellow, or red? High self-awareness, low self-awareness, or medium?
You want me to rate you?
Our relationship.
Oh, okay. So our relationship is hyper green
Nice.
in self-awareness.
The three
Just
options.
green.
the three options are
Sage.
It's rainbow. All right. The three options are green, yellow, and red.
Green.
Okay. Excellent. Number 2, emotional regulation.
Green. What?
Well, green
Tonight for
okay.
me? No.
All right. Real talk.
Yeah, no, green.
I want to be as transparent as possible. I would say it's green for you. I would say it's yellow, green for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair. Wait,
Yeah.
I thought we were sticking to 3, love.
I know. My bad.
Conflict. Let's go. Put them up. Just kidding.
I
Love you.
I love you too. All right. Number 3 is empathy.
Oh.
Super high.
Yeah,
Green.
that's really high.
Green.
Green.
Yeah. Number 4, accountability. If hyper green. Hey,
Very
too
green.
much. Is there too much accountability? Number 5 is resilience.
Oh gosh, I'm so
Green.
proud of that.
This
Green.
is going to sound like we're tooting our own horn here.
Yeah,
We're going to keep going. I'm going to rate you. Okay?
Okay.
Because I'm more comfortable with that.
Do you want me to rate you back?
No.
Okay.
All right. Self-awareness. Emilia's green. Emotional regulation, green. Empathy, green. Accountability, too much. No, green. Resilience, green. Healthy communication, green. Delayed gratification and impulse control, best I've ever seen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I feel
Best
like I
I've ever
suck
seen.
at that.
Yeah, well, that's the paradox. It's
Tina.
another. Yeah.
Just kidding.
You might want to explain who Tina is.
So Tina is a part of me. So I actually have categorized her as a very hungry part, and she's the
Loves
part
food.
of me. I've named her Tina because she
Loves food.
loves food, and she will drive me towards the great smelling cookies while I'm just running into the mall to get a little thing. You know?
There you go.
Yeah, loves food.
Self-respect and boundaries, green. Managing expectations. Ooh, that's your only yellow.
I can improve upon that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Emilia has this, and I want everyone thinking about their relationship and their
Yeah.
partner. Emilia, so if I were to rate you on this, it would be yellow for this one
Yeah.
because you have this part of you that wants everything to be optimal.
Sally.
So it's
steamroller.
So let's go into accepting that people in life are imperfect, understanding that not everything will go as planned, adjusting to reality rather than being stuck in disappointment.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the only one that I would say Emilia needs
I need
some work
on.
which is okay. Yellow, not red, yellow.
Mhm.
All right, number 10, conflict resolution and forgiveness, green. Super, super green. Okay, so we are going to put these in the show notes.
Mhm.
Production team, please put these in the show notes. I will send them to you right after this episode. And I want everyone to do green, yellow, red with themselves, their partner, and their relationship. We're here to do the work at Conscious Couples Podcast. Now, sweetheart, let's transition.
You don't want me to rate you just to model that? What that would look like?
You can if you'd like. You want to?
You had a vision. I don't want to tramp on it.
No. Do you want to? Yeah.
Okay.
Here you go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, love.
You're welcome.
All right.
This is going to be super uncomfortable.
Maybe. Let's do it. Are you okay with it?
Yeah, of course.
This is
And for everyone out
Peer
there
pressure
watching
consent.
or listening, I think it's going to be uncomfortable because I actually think I'm going to do very well.
Yeah.
And I think there might be a couple that won't be great, but I don't want this to come off as us just
no.
but I do want to share this. We have the most emotionally mature relationship that I've ever personally been a part of and or personally witnessed.
Yeah.
And I attribute that to you because you did this work. I didn't know what emotional maturity was. Like, I had never studied this.
Mhm.
Even this ChatGPT, tell me everything about emotional maturity. We did an event, I think probably last year or the year before, on emotional maturity.
Mhm.
And I realized I had never even thought about this before. So thank you, Emilia, for bringing so much great things into our world. And thank you to everyone who did this actual research.
Yeah,
as well.
seriously. Well, I have a lot of empathy for you, love, because I can't imagine growing up in a world like I can to the extent that I have, but if I were to put myself in a male's body and grow up in a prison where you literally you're not encouraged to have a diary. You're not encouraged to talk about your feelings. You're not encouraged at all. Like, you don't see anyone that's the same gender as you talk about their feelings, express their emotions whatsoever. Like, I would feel like so suppressed.
I don't feel like I was ever put in that box. I do feel like maybe culturally I was, but I was raised by my mother and my sister.
Right.
And I had a stepfather. My father passed away when I was 2. So I didn't have that sort of, and my stepdad was the very don't show any emotions type of guy. And I didn't get along with him well. So, sweetheart, I appreciate it. But honestly, I don't feel like I've ever been sort of conditioned to not feel.
Right.
As much as most men.
You did mention, however, at Evolve Movie Club, though, and I only want to bring that in for this element.
Shout out to Evolve Movie Club, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to anyone listening who's been there. It's the
first Monday of every month.
And we will put
Evolve.
that link in the show notes as well.
Why I mentioned that, thank you, Lovey. Why I mentioned that is because you had mentioned, along with some other male that was in the room, is that like to feel, we were talking about the concept of bravery, to feel in a room of men, that's like not encouraged.
You immediately get shit on.
Right.
Anytime you show any level of quote unquote weakness, you get made fun of.
Which is vulnerable.
It's like, oh, and again, trigger warning for anyone out there listening. It's like when you're a little kid, let's say you're an 11-year-old boy and you're with your buddies. And you show an emotion and maybe you start crying on the basketball court. Oh, what are you, a little bitch? That stuff starts happening, and the bullying and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I never fell for any of that, though. I said I fell for it less than others, I think.
Fair.
And I think the real reason is because I didn't have a male in my life growing up that I looked up to. And I actually think that's ended up being quite the gift, believe it or not. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
So let's get into
So with that being said, I appreciate that for context, because of the fact that why I'm going to rate you the way I am is because I've never been with an emotionally mature male to the level that you've been able to demonstrate and exhibit in our relationship. So kind of a little prequel too.
Thank you.
So our call with Alan and Emilia was just incredibly valuable. It was really cool to see that in just one session we were able to go so deep and to cover so many topics, and without going too much into the troubles, without getting depressive or negative or anything like that. And it was just amazing to see that at the end of the call we were able to hop off the call with way more resources and way better equipped to build trust and to resolve our conflicts more effectively in the future than we were to begin with. So we got a lot of value from it, and way more than we were both expecting. Not because we had low expectations, but because they really over-delivered.
Yeah, and it was really just great to be able to chat with someone and just connect with another couple that's really interested in, growth and becoming better people and becoming better partners. So it was just really fun to actually be able to connect with someone that's really invested in each other and the relationship and everything.
Yeah, they felt like really good friends that happened to be very wise.
Exactly.
So thank you guys, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Really quickly before she does this, I also want everyone to know I wasn't always this emotionally mature.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot in my late 20s and early 30s about all of this. So when I was younger, I mean, it's very clear in college and high school, there was definitely some emotional immaturity. And so I just want to say that. And this is a growth journey that never ends. Okay.
This is true. This is true. It's cumulative. All right. Self-awareness. Green. Emotional regulation. Green. Potentially yellow sometimes.
Be
I'll
honest,
put it there.
You don't have to protect
it. It is green. It's not
good.
Protecting.
Okay.
It's more so like in comparison to the statistical average.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
You're
that's fair.
Green AF. But in our relationship, this is where my manage expectations is yellow. I do think that there's moments where emotional regulation skills are difficult for you.
Well, I've said this in the past. Emilia and I have gone 5 years without ever fighting. No storming out, no slamming doors, no raising voice, no yelling at one another.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because of her emotional regulation is world class. That it would be hyper green for her if.
Thank you.
And there have been times where you would say, "Sweetheart, you're raising, it's elevating," and I'm like, "Oh, oh, I'm sorry," and then I usually.
Empathy.
come down and bawl my eyes out. I'm kidding.
Oh, so sweet. Empathy is
at
a
least
green.
once.
Hyper green. Accountability, super green. Resilience, green AF. Healthy communication, very green. Delayed gratification, impulse control, wicked green. Self-respect and boundaries. This one you're working on.
Oh, that was yellow.
Yes.
Our cats are trying to storm the keep right
That's yellow, I would say. Managing expectations, I would say that that's yellow as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Conflict resolution and forgiveness. That my initial says yellow.
Okay.
But you're better than any other male.
FYI, we're emotionally regulating currently because our dog and or cats are trying to storm the keep.
Oh,
They're
it's
trying to
a
get
whole
in
thing.
here. Yeah.
Emotional intelligence versus emotional maturity.
That's
Oh, yeah.
can that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're green on a lot of those.
I've got a couple yellows though.
Yeah.
So
But for partners and or people listening to this episode, like that's exactly what you can do. You can pull up the list from this episode and you can rate each other and see how scary that is. It's so scary to be rated, especially when you know that you're like, that's an area that I want to work on. Or your partner has all of a sudden said, well, you're a red on that. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Right? So like,
here's the deal,
be
ready?
mindful.
if you do say red for any of them and then they freak out, it's probably true. Okay, so for anyone out there watching or listening, go through that with your partner, sit them down, have that dialogue. If they're not willing to do that because they're maybe red on too many, at least do it yourself so that you can move forward
Yeah.
and then pick a couple at a time to work on.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sweetheart, before we go, I know we gotta jump here, have a Sunday night with us. The date night.
I can't wait.
Same. So we have some food waiting. I'm very hungry. So I've been delaying
And I've
gratification
missed
for
you
quite
so much. We've had such a busy day, guys. It's been so busy and we work so hard all the time.
You know it, love. Okay, so what is the compound effect of being in a relationship that is emotionally immature?
Whew. The better question is what isn't? So the compound effect of being in a relationship of someone or with someone who is emotionally immature, I would say just in general, your stress levels are going to go out. Compound that or map that out over the course of whatever the relationship is. Your immune system is going to tank. There's someone that actually literally...
So you'll be sick often?
You'll be sick often. Yes. There's someone that I literally have in mind who just broke up with her boyfriend because of the work that we've been doing. She had strep 4 times in a row since being exactly with him. And now that she's out of that relationship, voila, her immune system is finally bouncing back.
Nice.
That's just 4 months.
Shout out to your client.
Yeah. I'm so proud of her.
If you are in a relationship that's toxic, you gotta sail away.
Right.
It takes tremendous courage. If you need help, please reach out.
Right. So the emotional immaturity is going to tank your immune system because ultimately it's going to bring so much stress because of the things that we just talked about. So if your immune system tanks, then what happens?
What else, love?
What also happens is your willpower tanks. So you're making poor decisions and you're likely having to cope with that emotional toxicity that your relationship is having. And so those choices that you're making to try to cope with that, poorer choices in health and food, you're likely getting less sleep, you're making likely less healthy choices for yourself. So long term, your health actually degrades. You're more susceptible to all the plethora of health risks and difficulties. Obviously, you're going to start struggling with boundaries and actually having a life of your own. You likely will be manipulated into some really horrible things where not only is your life not alone, but you're going to revolve around this person. You're going to walk on eggshells. You're going to not be able to say no eventually.
Okay, let's have you hypothetically think of a couple anonymously that you believe is in an emotionally immature relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're thinking of the couple?
Yep.
You got them. Okay. Anonymously, what are the top 3 signs in that specific example? And be specific about this couple.
Okay. This couple, in this case, it just so happens to be the male that is emotionally immature and has a significantly different, like a wicked big gap when it comes to the female in the relationship. And
Gap in what? Maturity?
I would say maturity. Yeah. Like not only is he just emotionally immature, but like wicked immature.
Yeah.
For those in Massachusetts, wicked. So the first sign that you'll see is cannot take feedback. So what that usually
can't take
shows
any
up.
feedback of self.
I was going to say how that usually shows up is no self-awareness.
Yeah.
No self-awareness, and doesn't have any inclination or care for how they, as they move around in the world, impact other people.
Can you give us some tangible
I was gonna
examples
say.
in this? Because that's what I'm trying to make this. This
Yep.
is a lot of theory, and I love it, but let's make it more tangible.
Yep, exactly. A really great example. It's super small, right? Food happens all the time. So this is where this happens all the time in their relationship, where he'll be hungry. All of a sudden, he recognizes that hunger cue. He says, "Hey, babe, I'm hungry. What are we having to eat? What are you making?" There's an unconscious expectation that not only is she cooking for him, but like she has to determine everything. So while that might seem super simple on the surface and like a very easy question, there is no offering or no self-awareness that like, hey, I'm actually asking her a question while she's in a state of picking up and doing all of her laundry, having just gotten home from work. She literally like has asked him 10 times before this, before he approaches her about dinner, to maybe have a plan in play around what to eat for dinner. So like this person is going around again and again with him at the center of everyone's universe, including his.
Okay, so real quick, take that example. There's low self-awareness. He doesn't even know that he's doing this probably. He's probably getting pissed off when it doesn't happen. He's not showing empathy for her being super busy.
Why haven't you made dinner
He
yet?
doesn't, exactly. He's holding her accountable, but not holding himself accountable to anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's not communicating in a healthy way, asking in a way that's not overly dominant, or he's not delaying gratification or controlling his impulses, which is why he's suddenly, hey, what's for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
And then not self-respect or boundaries. Don't worry about that one on that. And then he's not managing expectations. He's expecting food to be on the table at the right time, at the right place, in the right way.
He's not honoring her boundaries when they've talked about it literally every single night.
And then, so at the end of the day, everyone... This is what I said to Emilia in the car before prepping for this episode. I said, it is safe to say, I think, that the quality of your intimate relationship will be directly correlated to the amount of emotional maturity developed within it. Because over the last 5 years, Emilia and I have been basically 2 weeks into our relationship. There were people who thought we'd been married for a decade because we just fell so head over heels in love.
Not in the bickering way.
Yeah, not
People
in the
might
negative.
interpret
No,
that.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I'm talking head over heels in love from the get. And I've had people in my life that have said, I want a relationship like you and Emilia. And I respectfully would say, and I started doing this recently, back then I didn't have the courage to say this, nor the awareness to say this, but if I could go back in time, what I would say is this. Emilia's emotional maturity is a level 10 statistically. She's been working on this her whole life and studying this her whole life. So you can't just have a relationship as good as mine when you don't have the emotional maturity and the inner work and the therapy and the decades of study under this stuff. Trauma informed, all this stuff. So the quality of your relationship out there, conscious couples, conscious singles listening, your intimate relationship will be directly correlated to the level of emotional maturity within it, maturity. And I feel like in my late 20s, I worked so hard on myself to become the type of man that can be with Emilia Smith and not only be with her, but flourish. And I'm still working on that. I had a call with my therapist, Carol, on Thursday of this past week. So it's it's a journey, not a destination. It's something that you have to work on daily. And that's what we talk about. So love isn't built in a day. It's built every day. And anything you want to add before we go?
The only thing that I'll add was the comment that I added in that conversation that I think is important to pull forward for our listeners, because ultimately emotional maturity is a byproduct of all of those meta skills and then some, right? That we just went through. But what's critical, and this is a conversation that I oftentimes have with people around emotions, around relationships, around these interpersonal and intrapersonal dynamics, is that is, yes, a byproduct of the work and the research and all of this growth and skill mastery, etc. But it's also not just randomly accessible. So it's not like you can flip that switch overnight, because of the fact that you and I, right, we talked about how there's a whole architecture, like a neural brain capacity architecture that needs to be here in play, right? For example, if I am triggered biochemically, I might not be able to access my emotional regulation toolkit because of the fact that my central nervous system is taking me into a flight standpoint. So it is a cumulative compound effect of skill mastery.
Yes.
And
it's
I
like
was
playing
not
basketball for a decade.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like you accumulate all those little nuances along the way, and you're not going to be perfect. However, you get better and better every single time because you just build and compound on what you have built.
And all of us can think of an adult who acts like a toddler. And all of us can think of a young man or young woman that acts like an adult. They're a mature individual. It's wonderful. They're a professional.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Like I remember getting called like at like 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, like, oh, she's so mature for her age. It's like, yeah. But like, that's the thing. Maturity is a byproduct of this cycle where you observe, you study, you practice it, and then you like go and ingrain and say, how can I get better? You and I talked about how every single situation you pull a golden nugget away, and I pull a golden nugget away of what we can work on. Even just doing this right now where we're yellow, right? We can go improve upon.
Of course.
So it's a compound effect.
Okay. And what she means by that ultimately is, if you're going to get better at basketball, you have to practice daily. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get better at hockey, you have to practice. If you're going to get better at emotional maturity, you have to practice this. So next time you have a conflict or a challenge, maybe you get a little bit better each time, a little bit better each time. You're not going to be perfect, but you're going to get better each time. And then your relationship will get better, and then the me's will get better, the we will get better, all of that. Okay, yes. We got to jump. So before we get out of here, if anyone is struggling out there with emotional maturity or your relationship, you feel like you're growing apart, not together, reach out to Emilia and I. I have a client of mine who I coach on the career and business front who is going to be working with us soon. She mentioned that. Shout out to you. And by soon, she said within a year or two before her and her partner move in together. You know who you are.
Nice.
And I'm super, super excited. And I said this to her. I said, it's like relationship insurance. We're going to make sure that you two shore up the castle in advance to make sure that you guys can build your goals and dreams together. And we're going to work with you on all the little bugs in the garden that you can squash while they're small.
Right.
And that's what Relationship Talks coaching ultimately is.
Yeah. And certainly, like, if you're not married yet, you can squash them before you get into the more serious aspects of your relationship. I know that's what a lot of people that I've talked to, they look up to us in this podcast in the Conscious Couples community, because it's like, I want to do better than my parents did. And part of that is stepping into a setting like this, a community like this, and really learning about a lot of this stuff so that the things that you didn't know just don't become by default the epigenetic trauma that you pass down to your children, right? So kudos to you if you're listening to this podcast. It's absolutely awesome.
She had said she wants to do Relationship Talks coaching before they move in together.
Even better.
During that process so that they can build together.
Wow, good for her. That'll pay freaking dividends. It's literally so amazing, and one of the best things that you and I do, I think, in this world.
I agree.
Okay, so in addition, in the show notes, so we got so many things in the show notes, including our invite to you on our next Relationship Talks event. It is going to be our 44th, so we're like in the grind of it, and we're gonna be bringing you the best of getting on the same page about personal growth. Oftentimes, because we've been doing this for over 44 months in a row, and 4+ years of this, we've been studying, and it's been insane to see how it's so obvious what is going to be called and referred to in this event. And you guys know, if you have been listening to this podcast,
3.7 years,
there is a growth gap that happens. And anyone that it has or is in a growth oriented relationship, there's usually a growth gap, AKA you're not growing at the same speed, rate, velocity, what have you. And what you might be doing for personal growth, your partner might not be, and likely isn't. And that's okay. However, if you don't have a strategy to come together and kind of build a bridge and build a ladder, that gap could get bigger. And so this event is all about how to close that gap when you two are growing, so that you can grow together, not apart.
If I could go back in time, I would have had that conversation with Emilia. I think it was pretty implicit with you and I, because we were both very growth paradigm, and we're both very growth oriented. And I remember I had a past guest on the Next Level University podcast. It was a relationship and marriage counselor named Tori Aletto. We had her at one of our events, speaker. You loved her, and you loved her content as well. And she had said the point of an intimate relationship is growth. And I remember thinking,
boom, baby.
That is it. That is it. So if you feel like that's not the case for your partner, and you're listening to this show, we've had this happen a lot, and you bring this show into their world, it's time to get on the same page about growth. please come to this event. Click the link in the show notes and register, and we will talk to you soon. Okay, we got to get out of here. Sweetheart, as always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.